Let me officially welcome you to the first installment of Coffee and Conversation with Pastor Paula. I'm Pastor Paula Smith. I'm glad you joined us. One of my favorite times of the day is when I wake up in the morning, I can pour a hot cup of coffee and have a good conversation with Jesus. I'm of the firm belief that every conversation is made better with a hot cup of coffee, cocoa, or tea. So I hope you poured your favorite as you joined us this morning. One of the things that I really want to portray in these conversations that we have together is an understanding of the true nature of the God that we serve. It's one of my favorite studies that I do in my own personal study time. It's a study of the names of God and what they mean and who He wants to be to us. One of my favorite hymns growing up in church was the hymn, He Brought Me Out, and the first verse of that hymn goes like this. It says, "My heart was distressed 'neath Jehovah's dread frown, when low in the pit where my sins dragged me down. I cried to the Lord from the deep miry clay. He brought me out to golden day. He brought me out of the deep miry clay. He set my feet on the solid rock to stay. He puts a song in my happy soul today, a song of praise, hallelujah." In Isaiah 60:16, God tells us that He is our Jehovah Jireh. That means that He is the Lord thy Redeemer. I had the opportunity this week to sit down with a young man who has a testimony, a powerful testimony of God's redemption. I want to tell you that you're going to learn through this young man that it doesn't matter the circumstances that you were born into. It does not matter the circumstances that you were raised in. It doesn't even matter the sins of your past or the miry clay that you got yourself into. We serve a redeeming God. He is the Lord, thy Redeemer. And so I want you to listen to the testimony of this young man. His name is Rob King. And I hope that from his testimony, you realize that God loves you. He wants to redeem your life. He has a plan for you, and that plan is wonderful. So today I am here with a young man who actually happens to be my first cousin on my mom's side, Rob King, and he has agreed to sit down with us and share his testimony. We're just going to have a casual conversation today. He's going to let us know where he's been, where God is taking him, and I'm excited, appreciative that Rob finally agreed to allow somebody to record his testimony. I think you're going to enjoy it because it's powerful, and I know that it'll probably touch a lot of people. So I would like to introduce you to Rob King. Welcome, Rob. Thank you for sitting down and talking with me today. So I know a little bit about your testimony. We're just going to talk a little bit about the things that God has redeemed you from. I told you a little bit about my favorite hymn when I was a kid being the deep miry clay. And it's definitely something that I think about every time I think about Rob's testimony. That song comes to mind, just God's redeeming power, how He reaches down when we're in the deep miry clay of sin. He pulls us up and sets us on solid rock, and just watching you live out your life since you came to Kentucky and have been involved in the ministries here. It's encouraging and it's challenging, I think, to a lot of people to keep doing what God asked them to do. So we're going to kind of start in the beginning. That always seems like a good place to start. We're going to start in the beginning, and you just tell us what you want us to know about your beginning, about Rob as a child and where you come from.
Okay. Well, if I had to think about my childhood, I guess one word would pretty much sum it up: tumultuous. It was rough. It wasn't by any means a normal childhood. There was a lot of arguing and fighting in the household. I was exposed to a lot of things at a young age that no child should be exposed to. There was abuse as a child. There was, verbal, physical. There was drug use in the home. There were different things. A very wicked environment to grow up in. That was.
So, if I'm understanding correctly, Rob, you weren't really raised to really know about God or in church or anything like that?
I can remember, being put on the church van and sent off to church. I can remember Sunday school, Bible studies, vacation Bible school. I grew up in an area where, church wasn't of importance to a lot of people, and in the home it was no different. And so any memories I have of church or God or anything like that was very vague. No sense of relationship, no sense of who he really was. It was just somewhere to go do crafts really and hang out with friends.
So you were introduced to God and to church, but it wasn't lived out.
Yes.
In front. A relationship with God wasn't lived out in front of you.
Exactly.
All right, and so tell me, I know that you felt the call into ministry, and you can elaborate on that a little bit, but tell me, how old were you when you were called into the ministry?
I was 9 years old.
9 years old. That's pretty incredible. And so tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did that happen?
So, being in a home relationship I was, we were eventually taken away from our parents by DCF, by the state, and they gave us the option, my parents the option to either put us in a foster home or go stay with family. We were in Dayton, Ohio at this time, and so my uncle and aunt agreed to take me in. That was in Florida. And this is where the biggest thing that I can stress about my testimony and when I got my call and when everything happened was, is providence. God, the home he put me in, was right across the street from a youth leader.
Wow.
I became really good friends with his son, and that was when I actively started going to church. He took me to it was an event called the Power Team, and it was these strong guys that were doing feats, and they were talking about their rough past and the things they had experienced and things they had to go through with their own drugs, different things. And I remember crying like a baby. And
that was a God moment.
Yeah. So I went to the altar at 9 years old and said the prayer, and I was really on fire for it, and I believed every word of it, and I know the Lord was moving. There's no other way to explain how everything happened. So it was soon after that I was at school, and we were given an assignment to write about what we wanted to be when we grew up, just a short little poem. And at that moment, right then when the teacher said what the assignment was, I knew, I could clearly hear in my head God talking to me and telling me that I was to preach, and that was when I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I wrote it on that. I still have that paper hanging in my office, and I have never wavered from that call. I'm so confident, and that's what it was at 9 years old, because all these years later, that's never changed. My call, the Lord talking to me that day, is still clear as day.
So, knowing a little bit about your testimony, clearly you didn't stay on that path toward, God's calling on your life. And so, there's that well-known saying that sin will take you further than you want to go, it'll keep you longer than you want to stay, and it'll cost you more than you want to pay. And I think that you could probably testify that that's been very, very true in your life. So talk to me a little bit, looking back at those years. Was there a pivotal moment or a moment that you can kind of put your finger on and say, that is where I went wrong, that's where I know I got off of that path from knowing what God was calling me to do in my life to going down a very, very dark path in your life? Was there a moment that you can put your finger on?
I can pinpoint the exact moment. I was 11. So there was a 2-year period where I was going to church. I had my relationship with the Lord. I had actually, during my trips down here to visit, I had actually told your dad back then I wanted to preach.
And you were still in Florida at this time, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we were in Florida. We would come here and visit. And so, yeah, I started sharing with people during those 2 years. You know, this is what the Lord's putting on me. I started speaking in church, singing, different things. But at 11 years old, I think, you know, that's when the devil raised up against me and said, you know, this guy's going to do something for the Lord. And so 11 years old, we had got moved into a housing project. My parents came down to Florida and got custody back of us. They decided to stay in Florida and not go back to Ohio. So I had family members that were staying with us, and one of those family members introduced me to drugs at 11 years old. I kind of jumped over the gateway drug, marijuana, and tried crack cocaine for the first time at 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
After that, that was where it all went downhill.
And did that immediately become an addiction for you, the drugs?
I wouldn't say an addiction as in the sense of you would think of addiction as needing it or, you know, physically being dependent on it. I would say in the sense of we were living in the projects and I was trying to fit in and hang out with all the cool older guys, and that's how it started.
Yeah. So at 11 years old, that's kind of the point that you started to go down this path of, I guess, running from God, running from the call on your life. Really, you were probably living what was being lived out in front of you with the situation in your home and your family members. And the reason that I wanted to have this conversation with you today, Rob, isn't so that we can point out all the dirt in your past or, you know, kind of make you feel guilty. I believe, you know, that God has cast your sins as far as the east is from the west. But I also believe that you have this testimony that God wants to use to help other people come to Him and understand Him. I want to talk about God pulling you up out of the deep miry clay. And when that happened, how that happened. And you can fill in any gaps that you want to fill in that you may feel are important to your testimony. And so tell me about the turning point in your life and what led you to that turning point, the things that were going on in your life where you realized, okay, enough is enough. I'm ready for a new life.
So I guess that does take a little filling in the gaps and a little more background. So after that at 11 years old, after the way I was living there, as I got older, I was a functioning addict. I'd look my parents straight in the face and family members and go to school, and nobody ever knew anything. So I finally dropped out in middle school. I had a period of getting bullied and then getting tired of that and becoming a bully. And so as I got older, I started working. I was committing small time crimes, stealing here and there, but I was working to supply my habits, pretty much what everything was going to. So I worked my way up at Burger King to a manager job at 18, which led to me getting into corporate jobs for fast food restaurants, making decent money and wearing a tie to work, and then just nobody knew a thing.
You like wearing a tie.
So I mean, it was so bad that, I mean, I was doing things like going to work and going to the bathroom and getting high throughout the day. I was driving to work doing it. That was when I left. It became, at that point, it was a physical addiction. I had to have it or I would be sick. So then my crimes escalated. I got to a point where I was committing robberies with a gun. I was committing burglaries. I guess this started around, you know, as I got into my adult years, the beginning of my adult years. And so the crimes got more intense, the drugs got more intense. I went from the one drug, you know, I had developed into multiple drugs. So it got to a point where work wasn't happening. I was stealing from them. I ended up losing my job, couldn't make any money anyhow, which led to more committing crimes to have the money to do what I needed to do. My family got sick of it. I was with my daughter's mom at the time when it hit its peak, and she put me out and refused to help anymore. And we can't stay here. And everybody, just the whole family, everybody I knew turned their backs, didn't want anything to do with me. I was a thief. I mean, nobody even wanted me in their house. I treated people terrible. Nobody wanted to be around me. So at the age of 24, I had been wanted for a few years. I had been in and out of jail, brief stints, just a month here and there.
And what is it that you were wanted for? Do you mind me asking?
Well, that was the robberies with a gun. That was the serious stuff. That was in the state of Florida where I was at. Those crimes carry life charges, which is why I was running. So they finally called me, 3 o'clock in the morning one night. They pulled me over with a friend, and they finally got me. And so I went to county jail.
So let me stop you right there. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? So what was going through your head when you realized the jig is up?
I guess that's a good point, because I kind of skipped over it. Relief. And that, that sounds crazy to some people, but as soon as I realized I fought and I tried to get away and everything else, but once I realized I was done and it was over with, it was a sense of relief. It was a weight off my shoulders. It was, I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore. It's done. It's over with. I actually had the mentality that I can finally go get some sleep. I can go to county jail and just lay down, and at this point, I wasn't worried about county jail anymore. It was the same thing to me over and over, and it was like a second home, pretty much. But this time I knew I was going on some more serious stuff. My first night there, I spent, I don't know how many hours in the interrogation room with detectives. I mean, I knew that it was going to be a lot worse this time with my sentencing. So while I was in county jail awaiting trial, my best friend passed away in October. She was murdered. And 2 days later, my mom passed away. And I knew then that God was, and this is why it takes so much to explain, it's a gradual thing. I knew that He was coming back into the picture. Well, not that He wasn't always there, but He was, I was clear-headed enough to realize it. So when my mom passed away and this girl passed away, I can remember vividly getting a call about my mom, and they were back to back, and I can remember just walking through the dorm. It was like the old Charlie Brown cartoon where you hear voices, but you can't hear what they're saying. And I can remember going straight to my room and hitting my knees. And when you lock your cell door, there nobody can get in the cell. So I locked myself in on purpose, and I just hit my knees, and I talked to God, and I cried. But I felt just a sense of peace. Like it wasn't the same kind of upset and devastated and all of that. That was the kind of stuff that brought me to anger, to feel like that. And I wasn't mad. I can't explain it, but it was just a sense of peace. And I started to realize it was God was there with me.
And so do you kind of feel like that day, I know that, being arrested, when that final time when you finally realize, okay, this is it, I'm going to have to face, the music, some really serious charges. I know that probably had to be a really low point, but that day, having your friend pass away and then getting that call that your mom, had passed away, and here you are in prison and not able to kind of be there with your family. Do you feel like that was your low point? Like that was the bottom?
That was the bottom. That was the low point. But that wasn't when I surrendered.
Still wasn't that?
That wasn't the end.
Yeah, okay.
So I sat in county jail for a year. I went to prison. And I was, at my first prison, I got right back into the same stuff. I was going to Bible studies and stuff in county jail, and I was trying to build that relationship.
Because what else do you have to do, right?
Yeah. So I went to prison, and prison's a different ballgame than county jail, and it's a little more intense. So my first thing I do is I started working out in county jail. I say, I'm just going to get big. Nobody's going to mess with me, and it's going to be all about treating people how they treat me, and just being, I guess, a jerk. So I developed that mentality of get them before they get you, and wasn't treating people right. And then I started, I got a job in the kitchen, and I got an employee to start bringing stuff in. So they started bringing me cigarettes and cell phones and different kinds of drugs. Now I wasn't using. I didn't go back to doing the things I was doing in the sense of using, but I was supplying it to people, which was worse. So I got called. I got put in the box for 30 days, waiting to be shipped to a new camp. That was my turning point.
Okay.
I got in there, and there was not a single soul in there with me. Solitary confinement, just miserable heat in Florida, no AC. The only thing I could do was ask God for help. Like there was nothing else. Even being arrested, knowing I was going to do a long time, everything that was piled on me. It wasn't until this point that I said, "There's nothing. There's no way out of this." Every other time I found a way out. So I started talking to God heavy, taking notes, reading the Bible. The only thing that lets you have in there is the Bible. So I'm in there and I'm telling God, it's just time to get serious. And He brings a few verses to my attention as I'm reading. Genesis 50:20, where Joseph tells his brothers, "You intended the army, but God intended it for good, to save the lives of many people." Let the thief steal no more, I believe is in Ephesians or Philippians. There's just so many verses that started jumping out, and it felt like reading these verses, even though they were words on a page, God was talking to me directly. I could audibly understand what was going on here, like a conversation with God as I was reading the book. I came out of there completely changed. That was I call it my Saul to Paul moment right there. I came out and I got lucky and I got my custody back down. I got switched to a dorm that was set to the side for the Christian inmates. It was a community just for faith, so they didn't have to deal with all the stuff going on. And in there, I started to meet a lot of guys that were just genuine Christians like I had never seen in my life. I seen them 24/7, so I knew they were walking the walk just like they talked it. So they started mentoring with me, Bible studies. And then after a few months, I was leading services in the chapel and working with the chaplain and doing different things. And that was when it got really serious.
So really, if you think about it, although I'm sure that you would have preferred to have a story where you didn't go to prison, but listening to your testimony, prison was a really important part of your life. It was a way that God, He used that to bring you back to Him and to kind of, have that come to Jesus moment with you. And that's incredible when we think about something like prison, and obviously we don't, ever want that to be a part of our lives, but God is so good about meeting us where we are, that He doesn't expect us to come to Him already all cleaned up. But He makes things happen in our life so that He can meet us exactly where we're at. And I think that's pretty incredible. So how long did you spend? You're in the penitentiary at this point, or okay? And so how long did you stay there?
I did 5 years altogether in prison.
Okay.
So I got to a point where after I got my relationship back right with the Lord, I was praying one night and it occurred to me, I said, Lord, this call's been on me forever. You've been telling me what I need to do. I've been rebelling, this and that. And it hit me just like a ton of bricks. And I said, I am in here. I might not ever get out of here. This is it. I'm done. And I said, but you know what? I'm happy. There was a joy that I couldn't explain, that I was doing what I was supposed to do.
The peace that passes understanding.
The peace that passes understanding. He had brought me to a point where I was content with being in prison if I could continue to preach and draw people to Christ.
Amen.
And I told him that. And not long after that, after roughly 5 years, I was released.
And so tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Well, I wasn't supposed to get out.
Right. Because you were given a life sentence at this point, right? 2 life sentences. Okay.
So it was the case of getting a return. Spent a lot of time in the law library. On top of that, I had some guys that worked in the law library and were very knowledgeable, and they were helping me. And it came down to just some details of my case that weren't up to par for how I was sentenced.
Okay. That was a God thing, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yes. you were released after 5 years, and how old are you at this point?
When I was let out, I was 29 years old.
And you're 31 now, you said?
31.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what has been going on with you, because I know that even though you felt that you really had a kind of rejuvenation with your relationship with the Lord while you were in prison, you're out of prison now. But and you can correct me if I'm, thinking about this wrong, you didn't get out and go into the ministry. Tell us a little bit about what transpired after you got out of prison.
Well, I got out and I tried to jump straight into the ministry. I went to several churches and talked to people about setting things up like recovery programs and things like that. Unfortunately, the churches that I chose to pursue ministry in were, not to say anything bad against the churches, but they were not, you had to look a certain way and act a certain way and be a certain way, and that disqualified me.
Sure.
So I was working, I got out, and I got a job as a dishwasher at Radisson Resort. The guy that ran the place was a chef. He had a history of heroin addiction in prison. He had been out for 10 years. He gave me a chance. He saw my work ethic, and that was out of just gratefulness for being a free man and working my butt off. And so they promoted me to, he gave me a chef position, cooking and training me on all that kind of stuff. And I eventually ended up with my own kitchen, and then I ended up running another kitchen, which was even more intense than that, a lot more people. And so, while I was working in these restaurants, at the same time I was getting discouraged about the ministry thing. Well, the devil decided to pop his head open. I would go outside to talk to the guys outside during our breaks, and I started hitting a cigarette here and there. Didn't think it was that bad or that serious, and I was starting to find myself cursing again. And those were the two things that really got me. It wasn't falling back into doing any of the stuff I was doing.
Sure, just some old habits.
Yeah. So I met my wife right after that. After I started working these jobs, I met her, and by this point I was, I was starting to smoke again and things like that. And so she came in the picture while I was in that state. And I told her in the very beginning that I had a call to preach. I was upfront with that. I said, "Where do you stand with the Lord? This is what I'm supposed to do." She said, "I'm behind you. If that's what you're called to do, then that's what you're called to do." Soon after that, we got married. It was very strong on me that was the one the Lord had directed me to, that providence. And so I was at work one day anyway. We came here to get married, actually. And so we went back. Well, while we were here, I spoke to your dad, and I told him, when I was a kid that I wanted to preach. Well, I told him I'm serious now. I'm coming.
Yeah, you don't tell Dave Spencer that you're called to preach and not expect to be held accountable for that at some point.
Well, I said, Dave, it's time to answer that call. He said, "I'm behind you. Whatever I need to do to help, And come to find out, they had never stopped praying for me. The power of the praying family is just, I believe, what got me through a lot. So anyway, we come here, we get married. I tell them all that. We go back to Florida, and I get to work, and then I start getting a bunch of hours, and I start bringing home, $800 to $1,200 a week. And next thing you know, I'm ignoring your dad's calls, ignoring David Spencer's text messages and calls. So, the guilt was on me. I felt terrible. But the conviction was there that wasn't there before. That's what I'll say. The Spirit was moving, and He was telling me, it's time to get serious. So I was at work one day, and we were getting killed. The COVID thing had already started. It was me and one other guy there. And a lot of people think I'm crazy for this, but the Lord audibly spoke to me at that point. The only words I heard were, "It's time to go." That was it. And I knew that it came with, at the same time I heard the words, it came with a sense of urgency, and it was like electrifying. I don't know how to explain it. It was just, we got to go. So I remember, I took off my gloves, I looked at the other guy, and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry. I'll explain later. I got to go." I walked out of work.
Okay.
I was so shaken.
So you walked out on your job, You called Leah, and Leah said, okay, babe, that's fine, I'll follow where you lead. And so what happened next?
Well, I can't give you an exact time of how long it was before we left, but I know that she didn't finish out her 2 weeks, so it was pretty quick. The devil, we were set on it, and the devil had one last attack. We called, we set up a U-Haul, we set up a car, we set up everything, we had this all planned, we're packed, we got everything sitting in the living room, it's a done deal. So we go to the rental place, and we go to get our car, and I say, where's the trailer hitch? And they said, well, you can't tow with these cars. I said, well, I specifically talked to somebody on the phone that told me we can tow with these cars. We've had this plan for weeks. So I said, all right, we'll figure it out. I'm getting aggravated. I'm getting overwhelmed. And so I said, you guys got box trucks next door. Let me get one of those. We tried that. Kept calling different U-Hauls, different places, and they're all saying we don't have our trucks out of state anymore. You can't take them and leave them. So there's nothing we could do to take our stuff. There's nothing. So I got upset, and I stormed off down the road, and I said, I'm done. Let's go home. Let's unpack. Let's put stuff back together. I'm through. After the Lord had audibly spoke to me, I still got to the point of, I'm done. I was so frustrated. And she grabbed my hand, my wife, and she said, babe, we talked about this. You knew the devil was not going to like this. You knew he was coming at you. You knew to be ready for this. He's done it before. So we stopped right there and we prayed, just in the middle of the road. And I said, okay, let's go back. So we went back. We took the minivan. We went home. Anything we couldn't fit in that minivan, which was just pictures, personal stuff, important papers, we sat out in the front yard and called my family to come get it. We gave away our car. We gave away our TVs, everything we owned. We gave away and we hit the road. And
so you've been in Kentucky for how long now?
Since July, the end of July.
Okay, and so I guess back up a little bit. Why Kentucky? What brought you here?
Well, I guess that was a big piece that I left out. Eastern Kentucky was always it was very vivid that was part of my call, that this was the area I was supposed to be at. Not only did God tell me, even at the age of 9, when I got that first call, I knew. Not only did he tell me that you're to preach, he told me where I was to preach. I came here as a kid to visit, as I said, like the summers and things like that. It was the only little bit of normalcy, being around the people here. And I would get around your dad, and I can just remember the sense of peace he carries himself with, and how he treated his family, and how he treated other people. And that was a big thing to me. It was a big influence, and it always stuck with me. And the Lord used that, I believe, to impose on me that this was the spot. And the fact that Dave was so willing to help with anything, to coach me along, to give me the training, everything I needed. And so, yeah, I always knew this was it. There were influences that I saw here. God was very clear when he called me, so I just never wavered in the fact that it was Eastern.
Okay, so Rob, what do you feel has changed in your life since you finally surrendered and said, okay, God, whatever it is, wherever it is, and having Leah behind you, very helpful. What has changed in your life, in your heart, in your mind even, since you finally surrendered and said, okay, my life is yours completely?
Everything.
It's a good answer.
Yeah. People that know me from before are absolutely amazed. I mean, when they see me on Facebook or I talk to them, I've had friends reach out to me from the past that have claimed Wiccan, that have wanted nothing to do with God, that have just absolutely hate hearing about God, period, and Jesus. And because of the difference in me, these people are now reaching out to me, like, what happened? We want to hear about this. Can you pray for us? And it's been a great testimony, but it just, everything. I mean, my physical appearance, the drugs had aged me, probably 30 years. So just, there's, I guess, a light to me now. The Lord calls us to be lights, and I believe that is something that, I'm giving off. And my temper, I used to be so mad, so angry about everything, and I don't get worked up anymore. I mean, there's not really a whole lot that can faze me, and it's that peace that surpasses understanding that we talked about, and then just joy. I mean, there's nothing that can break the fact that, we have a future hope, and I know that, and I know that I've secured that future hope, and I'll continue to secure that future hope.
And I would imagine that's important for you, coming from the background that you came from, that there probably wasn't a lot of hope when you're in the midst of that miry clay, all of that sin and the devastation of the way your family, lived and you were brought up, and hope. It's just so important for people. And I think, when, like you said, when the people that knew you before see you now, and maybe that light bulb moment for them, like, wow, if Rob can do it, I can do it, or if Rob can have hope, so can I. And I think that's pretty powerful, that hope in your testimony. That's great.
In the city I came from, I was pretty well known for being the worst of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, to see that change, it has given a lot of people hope. I like to believe that it has, and the Lord has definitely moved in a big way through that.
Yeah, and so where do you feel like God is leading you? I know that's hard to see. I don't think necessarily that I'm even asking what's your 5-year plan. Where do you see God leading you in the near future, as far as His calling on your life with your family and all of that? Where are you going?
No idea.
Okay, that's okay.
So the one thing that the Lord has imposed on my heart, and it's one of those things that I'm sure of, just like my call, is that I aim to help the people that were in the situation I was in. I'm to be available to addicts and ex-cons and people on the street, and people that don't feel comfortable talking to a preacher.
So you feel like that'll be a big part of the ministry that you are preparing yourself for right now in Bible college, and kind of being under different ministers and learning that eventually your ministry will be with addicts and maybe people who've come out of prison and different things. That's okay. And so what are you and Leah doing? Because I don't want to leave Leah out of that, because I always tell people when we come into a church that you don't get just me as the pastor. You get really the best part of our team is Josh. He's the best part, and then I come along to preach. But I think the family unit is so important in ministry. And so what is your family doing right now? Where are you guys ministering and how?
We're doing a little bit of everything. So first of all, she has been definitely my support through the whole thing. She handles, like you said, all the background stuff. I mean, if I need a song list made up or fill in for me at prayer meeting, or go to youth group and teach because I can't make it tonight because I'm busy. I mean, she is just all in anything I need. So far we've really been involved in a lot of community stuff. We really enjoyed when we got here. Me and your dad started doing the prayer tents in the community, and that was a big thing. And really got to talk to a lot of people, the kind of people that I want to reach. And so then eventually we accidentally took over a youth group at Rates Chapel. The pastor asked us to sit in one night and kind of share my testimony and talk to the kids, and we really hit it off. Those kids we fell in love with them, and they love us like second parents. And so it was supposed to be a one-night thing, and it's turned into we're still there. And on top of that, I'm preaching every weekend. I'm doing a lot of service at Jackson Church, just getting out in the community, talking to people, helping with things that need to be done around the church, organizing things. I try to do a lot of social media witnessing, and like I said, just the people that knew me in the past, they're far away, and I want them to be able to see what's going on here. So it's really, right now, where we're at is wherever the Lord says go. Since that first time we answered to the go, You've just been going, and you guys you really have been going a lot, and so I think that's great. So I don't want to keep you too much longer. One of the questions that I really wanted to ask you,
and I'm going to spring another one on you here in a minute, but if you were sitting across from little Rob right now, and there was, because literally that's what you're doing in youth ministry, and when you're talking to people, you're sitting across from little Rob's. And so if knowing what you know now, what would you like to say? What would be the thing that you would want to tell little Rob now?
Well, I think the short version would be 5 words, and it was the hope we talked about. It would be, hold on, it gets better.
Oh,
It was really a lot of, there was just no end in sight. It was, that's how I was going to live my life. And I didn't think there was any other way. And I had no, like we talked about, peace about the situation. I think that besides telling him to hold on, it would be the plain and simple gospel. There's a God up there that loves you. This is what he's doing. He is the one that's done this and led you here, and this is what he has in store for you.
Yeah, and I guess that you kind of answered the question, I guess if you could tell, because I don't know who's going to be listening or who may eventually stumble across this on YouTube or wherever it may be, but I have no doubt that there's going to be someone at some point who watches this, who somebody has shared it with, that is going to be maybe not in the exact same situation that you were in, but something very similar, where there may be drug addiction, a life of crime, desperation, that literally in the depths of the miry clay, as we say it. What would you say to them? As the redeemed Rob who God has pulled up out of that miry clay, what would you like to say to them?
So I attribute most of what happened in my life to the evil that came against me, either from other people and not to put the blame anywhere, but the devil uses that evil to really tear you down. And I think that the best advice I could give is, you're going to be persecuted against. You're going to suffer. You're going to have to go through hard times and hard things. So would you rather do that without a future hope? Wow. Or would you rather do that knowing that there's a reward at the end and that your persecution is for a reason?
Is there anything else that you want to share, anything you want to close this with, that you think would be important for people to know, or maybe a question that I left out or anything like that?
I would just go back to the hope. No matter what's going on, I mean, the world around us is crazy. People's personal lives are crazy. We each individually are dealing with a lot of stuff right now. And it always brings me back to the verse that we are to overcome evil with good. And the evil that we have to deal with on a daily basis can be overcome. And we can be more powerful than the things that are coming against us. That I'm always available. Anybody that ever needs to talk, it's kind of in the job description the Lord gave me. So Facebook is probably the best way.
And it's Rob King.
Rob King.
Rob King. All right. Well, thank you again, Rob. I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you coming. Thank you, Rob, for sharing your testimony with us this week. What a powerful testimony of Jehovah Jireh, the Lord thy Redeemer. How he picks us up from the miry clay, he sets our feet on solid rock, and he allows us to live free and redeemed. Thank you, Rob, for singing the song of praise that he's put in your heart. Just a little hint about what next week's session is going to be about. It goes together like a horse and carriage. Again, thank you for joining us for this installment of Coffee and Conversation with Pastor Paula. See you again next time.